Trigger warning. This episode may discuss one or more of the following topics: violence, death, including that of people of Indigenous descent, war, abuse, medical issues, self-harming behaviour, eating disorder behaviour or body shaming, drug and alcohol addiction, sexual activity, hate speech or strong abusive language, discrimination, and stereotypes. These potential topics have remained part of the episode as it forms part of the interviewee's story, which cannot be accurately told without including such information. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. G'day and welcome to another episode of Spectrum Uncensored. Today I have with me Naomie from Redcliffe. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for coming and speaking with me today. Could you tell me a little bit about where you're from and what you do?
Okay, so Redcliffe Peninsula. So I coordinate the MyTime program, which is a free national peer support for parents that have a child with a disability under 18. So my region is north of the Brisbane River up to Rockhampton, and otherwise I'm a parent and I have lots of hobbies, and that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Wearing lots of hats. So do you want to tell me a little bit about MyTime and what it is that you guys offer and what you do?
So MyTime was developed in 2006. It's funded by the Department of Social Services, or Services Australia, I think they're called now. The program was developed by the Parent Research Centre, basically about starting groups to reduce the isolation and that they found with parents that support a child with special needs. So I organise groups and have a facilitator in to run the groups and sort of find the locations of need and look at promoting it. So that's sort of in a nutshell. The groups are for the parents. There's not a lot of support for parents that have children with disabilities. And so, yeah, that's sort of in a nutshell what MyTime is.
That's really, really cool. And what made you choose that career? Like, what got you into that in particular?
I have a young fellow who's 23, nonverbal autism. So I've worked in the disability field for a long time. And in a previous role, I ran peer support groups for aging carers. So this is just another step in another direction. And I like to work with parents that have younger children. Now that my son's older, it just sort of makes it feel a little bit different. And I'm not just working in disability, in home and work. It sort of feels a bit different. So, yeah, it's exciting. I love supporting the parents. The better the parent is feeling about their role, the better equipped they're able to sort of support their child. So there's not much better than that.
Yeah, I find it's interesting, isn't it, that our lived experiences often kind of direct us into a particular onto a particular path, and it's often our children that kind of influence that. So it's interesting.
Definitely.
I've spoken to a lot of people that have a child that has a disability or have been touched by a disability in some way, and it's almost like given them that push to go in that direction, which I really like, because I really appreciate those lived experiences that people share, just because it's relatable. It's not robotic, I suppose. You're not reading from a manual. It's very much authentic, and
you just understand. And it's I think working in human services, it's a job you fall into by chance because of those things. Exactly, when your child's diagnosed, and as you go through the process yourself, and then opportunities come up, and so it's a field not a lot of people sort of leave school going, yes, I want to get into that role. It's sort of like a natural progression.
Yeah. But I love that.
It's good though.
Yeah. And what would you say your favourite part of your job is?
I've always liked meeting parents, people in general. So I guess in my role, because I coordinate, I also facilitate some of the groups. I have a group at Bribey that I'm facilitating to try and get that started up. I just like being around people. I like supporting people. I think what I can bring is, because my son's older, our emotional journey is at a different level. I looking back in the past, I can see,
Yeah.
like, he was diagnosed at 2, and that was 22 years ago, so things were a bit different. So emotionally it was really hard and really tough. And then I was lucky to work in different roles where I did work with aging carers, so I learnt a lot throughout sort of the high school years and schooling years. But it's nice to bring a perspective to parents to support them, but go, like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like, it's not all just bad and hard, and it's sometimes really isolating. Like, it does get better, like, through time, and as they grow up, it's very different from when they're younger. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and I
what I
think
really
too their
like about it.
challenges change, don't they? Like it's all
100%.
relative. Like
Yeah.
they might be really difficult in the younger years with one thing in particular, and then they overcome that. But then there's a new challenge that I mean, it's like any person. we all
Yes.
we all go through those ebbs and flows, and I always say,
100%.
I try to be the person that I wish I'd had at the beginning, and that sounds
Yeah.
very much like what you're doing, because
Yeah.
you're mainly working with people that have children under 18,
Yeah.
aren't you? So
Yep,
you've
yep.
got that kind
So
of
that's where my time's focused. It's the early years. I wish it branched out, because there's a lot of benefit with the aging carers, but funding wise, it's targeted for the youth and children, and so it's sort of building up that peer support for a parent to feel better equipped to do that parenting role. So yeah, it's the early years are good. I mean, I had an absconder. He used to run off. He would run through people's houses and things like that, go to the beach. So I never thought, whereas now he's 23, he'll sit down and watch a movie. He's probably too lazy to run. But back when he was younger, and I was like, why? Like, I never thought there would be a day, but there is a day where he's sort of calmed down a bit, and he's chilled. So,
that gives
yeah.
me hope, because mine is an
Yeah.
absconder. He's
Yes. And
very
it's fun.
fast.
But look, I always say, like, it gives you stories later on. Like, now we can sit back and go, oh my God, remember that time when he ran to our neighbour's house, ran through their house, and his dad's chasing. Like, it gives you good stories later on. It's similar to the movie The Black Balloon. Like,
Yes.
generally when you have people on the spectrum in the family, you watch that and you laugh and you go, oh my God. The memories of when they're younger are similar to that. Like, remember when they were running across the road and all this other stuff? So, it's good material for later on.
It really is, and I mean, it builds character, doesn't it? Like, my son has,
100%.
yeah, he's done some interesting things. He's been, I've gone to the toilet for 30 seconds, and he's been up on the neighbour's roof, and I'm like, how the hell did you get up there? And I've had him, yeah, he did the same thing. He runs through houses. He'll go to neighbouring houses. He's jumped the fence once, and our neighbour's son was in the shower, and he burst in there. So, like, awkward. But same thing, like at the beach, our son loves the beach, and there's been a time where, I mean, because of that lack of communication or ability to communicate
Mm,
effectively, he often just absconds because he can't communicate his needs or his wants. So it
yes.
turned out, we worked out later on down the line, he needed the toilet, but he's run off at the beach and gone to someone's back door to find a toilet. Because
Mm.
when I got there, these people were cooking their breakfast in the nude. I got to say,
Oh,
it was
no.
not good. So it was a very awkward
No.
moment. I can laugh.
I
I
love
don't know if
that.
they still laugh about it, but I certainly do. And I don't think they cook in the nude anymore.
Oh,
But yeah, it was pretty
I love
awkward.
it.
But yeah, as you say, they're good stories.
100%. And you're right, too, because when they're unable, because Jotham's very mode. He uses everything for communication. He's much better now that he's older, but when he was younger, it's like in their brain, they're going to try and stop me, so I just need to do it, because they can't say what they need to do,
Yeah.
especially when they're a bit obscure. Like, I've got to walk up the street and touch these trees, and I've got to touch 10. and then I've got to go back this way. Like, they're really
Mm-hmm.
complex things that they've got to try and articulate that they can't. So yeah, when they're younger, it's that just do or
Yep.
die, just go for it and try and get it done. So
Yes, yeah. Living in the moment.
100%, which
Yep.
we all should.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we could really take a lesson from that, couldn't we? I mean, obviously be safe and not dangerous, but yeah,
Mm.
it's very similar with my son. He can communicate through an AAC,
Mm.
hex, um, and some sign language now. So he's got the three. He's quite
Yeah.
versatile, but there was a time where he had no way to communicate except aggression
Yeah.
and absconding. So it was the fight or flight. That was it. That was all there was.
Yeah.
So it's definitely from a non-verbal perspective. It's hard because I feel for
Mm.
people that are stuck within themselves like that and they can't um,
Mm.
get out what they need to get out, and even when they can get out those basic wants and needs, it's still not getting out that complexity that everybody else can. And it is
Yeah.
hard.
And as they get older and the more they understand and know and want to do different things, it that gets more complex. We found puberty was obviously a very challenging time, but we got throughout puberty there was OCD as a separate diagnosis as opposed to just the autistic trait. So that was quite a challenging time. Hormones as well, testosterone and everything like that. Um, but like we sort of previously said before, looking at setting up the after 18 stuff is really important. So, when my son was 15, we started seeing a psychiatrist for that medication management and everything like that. Just so when we passed on from pediatrics, we weren't sort of stuck. I worked with a lot of families and their
Mm.
children were in their 30s, and once they hit 18, they came out of pediatrics and they hadn't seen neurologists, psychiatrists, their medication hadn't changed since they were like 17. And you've got sort of different behavioral peaks, and sort of when you're 30 again, your body goes through different stuff. So their parents were also aging and went
Yep.
through a lot of challenges. So we set up with a lot of, that was a good time to set up with especially a psychiatrist, because he's 24 now and we've known him for like 9 years, and so the psychiatrist knows that I'm not just fix him just fix him. There's nothing that needs to be
Mm.
fixed. He needs aids, but he also can look at Jotham and talk to Jotham and know when he's not, he can tell when he's physically not fine and when something may need adjusting. So and back with my son, it was pre-NDIS, so I worked really hard to sort of make
Yeah.
sure he had enough funding to cover him for when he left school, particularly because I'm not big on service providers or group settings, and he needed that one-on-one. So, we were really lucky, sort of, as we left school, everything was all set up and quite good. It was quite a smooth
Yeah,
transition.
and
So,
it's really tricky.
mm,
Yeah, it's really tricky
mm,
too because, as you say, transitions and things like that. But then you're trying to build relationships with people, and in a
yeah,
very neurotypical world, it's kind of like,
mm,
you can see this doctor today, it's fine. But in a
yeah,
neurodiverse world, it's not fine. You need to
no,
be building that relationship, and that's the same with us. Our son's only 10,
mm,
but he has a psychiatrist already, and
good,
we just found we outgrew pediatrics a lot
yeah,
earlier than you're meant to. So it
yeah,
got to the point where it was like, oh, we can't really help you anymore because this is out of our scope. And
yeah,
so, yeah, it is. It's building those relationships with people and building that trust too.
mm,
Trust's really important, especially in these kind of circumstances, because I don't think people realize just how much trust goes into just the everyday, especially with people
mm,
that are nonverbal and cannot communicate effectively or efficiently. So it's a lot of
yeah,
guesswork, a lot of problem solving, a lot of predicting, and you don't always get it right.
yeah,
But I always say to people, go with
no,
your gut, because my gut's never been wrong. Every time I've gone against it, I've regretted it. So it's you definitely have that inbuilt instinct. but you obviously worry for your children for when you're gone as well. And people don't tend to future proof and things like that. I'd be happy if my son had to live with me for the rest of my days, but what I don't like the
Yeah.
idea of is him not having somewhere to go to when I'm gone, in a sense that him having to be uprooted and
Mm.
not, it's already going to be bad enough when we go. And it's not
Yeah.
something that people like to think about, but it is something that we need to think about. And,
Mm.
my ultimate goal is to be able to get him into some sort of community housing at some point in his life, so that when that inevitable day does come, it's not going to change his life completely, I suppose.
I think with the NDIS, there's a lot more flexibility around how they're set up. I know lots of different families that have, some are in a still under a provider, some have, social housing, and they have their own staff going in. Some are rentals. I know some people that have bought a unit for them and they've moved them in. I think from what I've learnt with aging carers is you're best off to start transitioning before it becomes an emergency, and it has to. So that's where a lot of the
Yep.
times it goes wrong, when all of a sudden something happens. I think, and you're right, it's building up that community. And so that's even, a lot of families with children with additional care needs don't have a lot of external family that are involved through lots of different
Yep.
reasons. But having friends and other people that you trust, that, if something did happen, they would still keep an eye on them, after
Yeah,
you're gone, and,
definitely.
and be a part of their life. So, um, but I guess that's what we all really want in the end too, is building up that community of support around us in whatever way suits us personally. That's all we're sort of looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
And I mean, for us, we have a lot. We're very, very lucky. We don't have much family. Our family either lives too far away or they're too elderly to
Mm,
be able to assist.
mm,
So it comes down to adopted family, or the friends and all that kind of thing. But we're very, very fortunate that we've got a lot of very supportive people around us, and our son has a lot of adopted uncles and aunties and the like. So I don't think he would ever be alone, but I feel for the people that haven't quite gotten to that place yet where they've found their people, so to speak. And
yeah.
but it's definitely possible, and it's out there. It's taken a very long time for us to build that. So
Mm,
it's just talking more, I think, and starting
mm,
conversations, because it's, as you
mm,
said before, it's very isolating,
yeah.
and it's scary because you don't want to. You open up, you're vulnerable. So we're already so vulnerable and so susceptible to judgment. So it
Mm,
kind of already puts a dampener on things before you even begin. And we've had our fair share of judgment and nasty comments and nasty looks and things like that. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's the world, isn't it?
It sure, yeah, you can't stop what people say. And I mean, I've known parents that, have children that are in wheelchairs, and they've had people come up to them at the shops and said, "You've done something really bad for God to do this to you." And I mean,
Yep.
when my son was 3, someone asked me how it feels to be the parent of a retarded child. I was like,
Yep.
I was quite a younger parent, so I was like, what? But I think at that time, looking back, there was a bit of postnatal depression. I guess too, like I mentioned, its diagnosis back then was a little bit more. There wasn't Google to sort of research, or
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
little bit of Google, like, I don't know, but
Yeah. It
it was
definitely
still like,
wasn't.
it's
Yeah.
a challenging time when they're diagnosed. Whereas, not to take light from nowadays with diagnosis, there's just a lot more information. Everyone's a lot more informed, so
Yeah.
it's just different, I
I'm
guess.
I'm quite thankful that my son was born when he was born, because it was really, the awareness was starting to come to light a lot more.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was a child, I'm 33 now,
Mm,
and I wasn't diagnosed until last year, so I didn't know. Well, I think I did. I did. I knew it was different, but you know what I mean. I
yeah.
didn't know
Yep.
that was the case. So, my parents didn't know either. So, as you say, it's as time's going by, we're getting more
Mm.
information, and
Mm.
that's why the conversations are important to spread that awareness, so that knowledge is power, so they say, and
Mm.
I'm finding more and more people. My son's gone missing before, and people have found him, and it's
Mm.
almost like they've known straight away he's autistic and he's nonverbal, like they just knew it.
Yeah.
So that says a lot about the way things are progressing.
Because, I mean, previously, people are still institutionalized in the 50s. And I mean,
Yep.
even regardless of sort of just disability and that, women who are probably going through postnatal depression or menopause were also institutionalized. And that
Yep.
wasn't that long ago. So it's seen less as a deficit. You know what I mean? And it
Yes.
was
Yep.
always the worst case. And even still, people tend to sort of, not so much now, but not long ago, people were always scared because they were waiting for a big autistic meltdown, which does happen. It's a part of it, but you don't ever want your child to be thought of as just the person, that has
Yeah.
behaviors. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That
Like,
just
don't
has big
define them.
meltdowns. So,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. There's a reason
Totally.
for it.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess, and that's why my time is around. It's sort of parents meeting others. I know, a lot of my friends with kids that weren't neurodiverse or anything like that, sort of, it got a bit complicated going out and doing the catch ups and going to the playground when you had an absconder and stuff like that. So my time's sort of about meeting other parents that understand. You don't even have to talk. It's not sitting around and talking about the bad things,
Yeah.
it's just building each other up and having a laugh, having coffee. Guest speakers come along. We have people from social services and different areas of interest to come along and chat to parents. But I guess it's a sort of safe, non-judgmental space.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do with this, in that people
Yeah.
get to have a voice and they get to
Yes.
talk about things that they feel are relevant or need to be addressed, and getting information out there. And there's no
Yeah.
judgment. It's I
Yeah.
think that um, I believe that everyone should feel comfortable about all of that kind of thing. So it sounds like a really
Yeah.
really nice program, and one that
Yeah.
should be utilized if it's possible for people to utilize it. It's yeah, it sounds like you do some
100%.
amazing things for amazing people. So
Well, yeah, it's great. It's great. I'm a parent too, so I just get it. You know what I mean?
yes,
Like, there's just understand. So, you know, yeah, it's a tough gig, but it's a rewarding gig, and there's lots of good parts to it. No doubt there's always hard parts to it. Um, but like you were saying before, the world's changing a bit, and there's a lot more information out there. So, you know, that's a good thing. That's a good step.
yeah, good old
Yeah.
Google. It's definitely
Yeah.
been very helpful in my my researching.
100%. It's great. It's so
Yeah,
good.
everything's at your disposal now,
Yeah.
I think, so that's definitely beneficial. But yeah, it's, have
Yeah.
you got any advice for anybody that has got a child that they suspect may be on the spectrum, or have a disability, and they don't really know what to do with that?
Um, Find a MyTime group. No diagnosis for children um necessary. I,
Okay.
I I would definitely find a MyTime group and link in with other people that are doing it. And having a chat to them, that's always a help. I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of a tough one because I'm a part of a lot of the groups, especially on Facebook, and within NDIS, there's a lot of challenges for people trying to find pediatricians and everything like that. And I'm sort of, on a personal level, I'm removed because we've got our GP that we've been seeing for a long, long time, and we're all set up. Um, but I would say linking in with other people that are doing it. Um, and like you said before, if you know there's something that your child needs additional help with, you know what I mean? That's not a wrong
Yeah.
thing. So, um, just keep advocating, basically, and building up that support to be able to advocate.
Yeah.
But I guess too, one of the other things I really sort of would advise to parents, and when their children is not always able, but have a life outside of disability, like have some hobbies and have some interests that aren't just family related, disability related. Because through the tough times, it's draining. As a carer, you have to build yourself up. As a parent, you have to build yourself up because you can't give from an empty cup. So having interests, and even if it's a bit of crafting or sewing or gardening or anything, don't feel guilty about doing that, because you can't give anything from nothing. So, um, and parenting in general does sort of, it's all of you, you know what I mean? You're all
Yeah.
in, but yeah, taking a bit of time for yourself is a good thing, and definitely having interests outside of disability, because it is a consuming sort of world, and working with other families or other people, um, it uses up a lot. So you really need to replenish so you can still give and not just become burnt out at the end of it. And a lot of parents do. I mean, a lot of that's that looking at transitioning and moving people into their own homes and stuff like that. You don't want it to get to a point where you're burnt out so much that it has to happen as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just passing away or something suddenly happening. It's getting to the point where you've got nothing and you can't give anything, and then having to do it's a harder process. So that's some of the biggest advice. That's what I've learned from others and
Yeah.
used
I like
myself.
that.
So
It's
yeah,
we don't define our children by their disability, so don't define yourself as just a carer. I like that. It's yeah, it's
exactly.
true, and it's the same. They
Yeah,
say I always use that analogy of when you're on the plane. They say put your mask on before fitting one onto others, because if you can't, if you're knocked out, there's nothing you can do to help anybody. So you got to help yourself.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's definitely
You know,
that's some solid advice. I
and
think so.
100%, and ask for help. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I know years ago I was probably, the light, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. So
Yeah, I've
it
been
took
there.
me quite a while. And we've all been there. It took me
Yeah,
quite a while, and a social worker friend, because I can't go on antidepressants or anything like that. And she said, well, why? And I don't know, that sort of how she phrased things just made me question. I guess I had to work through my own issues and feelings of inadequate that I had to go on medication. I thought, well,
yeah,
my son's on antidepressants for a reason, and it helps. And I was always like, I didn't want him drugged when he was younger, and then you get to a point where you have to use medication. It's not a bad
yeah.
thing. So I did for a period, and I think my first day of taking antidepressants, it was the most euphoric day of my life. Like, I bought a
Yep.
painting I wanted to, I felt real high, but I think it was just a placebo from letting go of what I thought was acceptable or not, and going,
Yeah, it's the
oh,
stigmas. It's
yeah,
definitely a stigma,
yeah.
isn't it? Hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
asking for help as well, and sort of being honest about if you're just in not a good place, you're not at a good place. So that's also another thing that I think parents generally have to sort of learn, that it's okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Well,
Yeah.
I really appreciate all that you've told us about today, and I appreciate you coming in and giving us some of your precious time, and
Thank you.
thank you for all that you're doing, and because you're definitely making a difference. So I just want to
Mm,
say
thank you.
that we appreciate you, and it was lovely to meet you and have a chat.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much,
Right.
Jamie Lee.
No worries. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.